Hi everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I know I've been away for such a very long time, but trust me, it's going to be so worthwhile because I have so many guests lined up for you. And without any further ado, let me introduce you to today's guest.
Hi everyone, I'm Ellie. I'm currently a house parent at UWC SEA East for one more week. I've been here for 5 years. Originally I'm from the UK, and yeah, I'm reaching the end of my time at UWC in Singapore.
When did you join UWC?
I joined in 2017. We were in Malaysia before, so it wasn't a long trip to come over from Johor Bahru to Singapore.
What was your first impression of UWC?
Exciting.
What are your roles as a house parent?
So this boarding house is quite an interesting one because we have 150 students plus or minus across 14 floors, which means that our role is kind of split between, on the one hand, I'm the kind of like the mum for Tshepo family, which is a group of about 30 or so. And so for them, it's kind of checking in, seeing how they're doing with their health, with their well-being, with school, chatting to their parents, chatting to their teachers, and having like family celebrations. But then on the other hand, we're also caring for the whole boarding house, which means that we do duties where we're responsible for everyone, but it also means that we're responsible for kind of developing the house culture as a whole. So there's a lot of different activities that we run, groups that we might try and do with students to get initiatives going in the house, and yeah, there's lots of different parts to it.
So you mentioned that part of your role as a house parent is developing a culture that helps us grow as a community. In that regard, which initiatives have you started or been a part of over the past 5 years?
So there's been quite a lot, but for me, my, I guess, area of passion and what I kind of focus on the most are the environmental initiatives. So I've always been the kind of environmental house parent, I guess. And yeah, that kind of stems from the fact that there's this kind of deep narrative that runs civilization that results in the extinction of species and the ruining of earth and sea, and using nature and people as resource. And I believe that we need to kind of entirely shift our paradigm about how we interact with nature to, not completely destroy the planet and the social injustice that goes along with that. And Tampines House has been a really amazing place to kind of bring that passion in. On the one hand, with obviously looking at ways that we can live sustainably in the house. And there have been a lot of projects. So we have the environmental committee that essentially comes up with a lot of the ideas that we then run. And over the years, we've had initiatives in our food, so looking at limiting meat, and our food waste, like trying to, we compost in-house, send the food waste from dinner to the black soldier fly larvae, so trying to minimize that. We've had initiatives around fashion, kind of raising awareness of fast fashion, having clothes swaps, reducing our plastic, reducing deliveries, and just like appreciating nature as well, like getting out into nature, and yeah, being able to experience the positive effects on our own well-being. And I think, the process has definitely shifted a lot towards cultivating, I guess, compassion for ourselves, for the people around us, for the planet, and like connection to people and to the planet. And that's kind of, in many ways, become the center of it, I guess. And realizing the healing properties that being in nature has and kind of realigning with it. So yeah, we've tried to focus on kind of building community within the environmental committee, and that's led to more and more different things.
What obstacles have you faced throughout this journey?
I think, as with most things, the biggest obstacle has been the pandemic. Yeah, in many different ways. I think on the one hand, it obviously massively restricted what we could do. We couldn't gather together in groups so easily. It made it harder to connect over things. It made it harder to actually go out and be in nature and run trips because we couldn't be in groups of larger than like 2 or 5. So that made it incredibly difficult. And I think when we were at like the height of it was the year of green, actually, 2019 to 2020, and it was halfway through that the pandemic hit, and it was difficult to continue with certain aspects, so we had to really focus on what we could do, and it sort of meant we had to be very creative. So I remember at that point, no one else could come onto campus apart from the boarders, including the gardeners, and so the boarders had to look after all of the green spaces on campus. And I think since that moment, for myself and the people that have done that, the appreciation that we have for simply the nature on campus and just how incredible it is, all of the fruit trees and the herbs, and so we shifted things. And I think at the same time, because everyone is struggling so much, and you're kind of working on that like survival, like just trying to get by. And so some of the bigger picture stuff slips as well, and it's been a little bit harder to maybe stick with certain ways that we had got quite used to living in-house. So things like minimizing our plastic consumption and minimizing our food waste and being thoughtful about our purchasing. I felt like it was a stronger culture in many ways before COVID hit, and then after that it was difficult for it to be at the forefront, and so some things have definitely slipped since then. And obviously since then we've had new students coming in every year, and it's hard if you've got an initiative going and you want it to kind of continue and keep going year by year, but you have different students coming in, different staff coming in, and so it's that process of bringing in new people into the mission and the values, and we haven't had orientation very well for the last few years, and that's a really good time to do that. So I think things will improve and we'll be able to kind of create that culture again and keep the initiatives going as the general situation in Singapore is getting a bit easier.
And what have been your highlights throughout this whole journey?
So the highlights for me are always when I'm able to bring boarders along with me to do the things that I'm passionate about. So for instance, GUI, Ground Up Initiatives, the farm that I work at, and being able to bring students to work on the farm there in the boiling heat with our like big sun hats on, or there's the plastic project there as well, and we brought some students in the October break to kind of sit there cutting up plastic and melting it down to make products. And we've done like we did an evening walk, well, it's kind of a night walk really, through the forest. And it was just a small group because we could only be a small group, but that was a really amazing experience because it was night and it was dark and you're going through the forest and you just hear so many different creatures, and you see the moon, and it's a really kind of spiritual experience. And I think some of the moments, particularly in the early pandemic when we all just had to come together as a community, will always stick with me. Like when we were pretty much housebound and we would come together to do dance challenges just to like keep the morale up. And at that point we were also sewing masks for the migrant workers, and we were supposed to sew 300 of them, and so we had a lot of people there with just I think 2 or 3 sewing machines, just making mask after mask after mask for a few weeks. But it was such a special thing because we did it and so many people were involved, even if it was just for kind of like the music and the like bringing up the vibes. Yeah, but that was a really special experience as well. But there have been many.
Wow. I think my highlight, having known you as part of these initiatives so far, I remember the first week when I arrived and you had an activity which was cycling to an eco park here in Tampines, and I came and I couldn't cycle, but then I ran along.
Ran the whole way. I remember. Oh my god.
I ran along with you and a couple of other students. But ever since that day, like I've just been so inspired by the work that you do. I've just been so inspired seeing you doing body pump, body balance. I know I don't enjoy it all the time, but like just seeing that email pop up, I'm like, oh yeah, that's my reminder to go to the gym. Yeah. I think one thing which many students don't talk about is how the mind shift, you know. So we come from very different backgrounds, and when we come here, and when you first hear that, oh, there's Veggie Monday, the first impression, at most times it's negative, but over time, with like the initiatives we had last year, when we had, I think no meat for, I think it was a month.
Oh yeah, it can't have been a month.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a week, but it felt like a month.
I think it was a couple of weeks. But I think from then onwards, like for many people, as much as we kind of groaned and mumbled amongst ourselves, like we just kind of became more open to that idea. And for me personally, I remember when you started doing the initiatives to go and visit vegetarian restaurants, then I took up one of those opportunities, and honestly it was so amazing. I even went back again with my friends a couple of weeks after. So what you're doing is definitely very impactful, and we appreciate you.
Thank you.
So you mentioned that this is one of your passions. I think we're all just interested to find out, where does this passion stem from?
So I think my passion for nature and for the environment in general is something, we had this discussion in ENS committee where we kind of asked each other this question, and you realize that it always comes from maybe something that's happened to you in your childhood or kind of in your past. And for me, I did grow up around nature a lot, and kind of going for walks with my family, but I think it was more a realization of kind of the healing properties that nature had for me. Particularly, I was going through a lot of mental health problems in my teenage years, and I started running through nature, and the effect that would have was just, so kind of healing, and nothing else would kind of bring me that release. And so probably that's where it stems from, and it's that just love of the aliveness of things and that feeling of being one tiny part of something that's so much greater than myself. I think a lot of the time it's that feeling of awe, and it's spirituality at the same time, of realizing that you're just one tiny thing in the universe, and it's just this beautiful immenseness just like around you. And so it stemmed from that. And I think more recently I've kind of gone through that process again, because I really struggled in my first few years here, because I was studying in Malaysia at the same time as working, and it was very stressful, and I was having some mental health difficulties then. And that's when I discovered GUI, the farm, and the process of going there and working with the plants and just seeing everything growing around and above me was again something that would just, like, all my anxieties would kind of disappear, and I would be so present and focused, and stuff didn't seem to weigh so heavily anymore. I realized the importance of just like feeling love for a place and for nature. And for being at GUI, I also realized the power of love and the feelings of love for nature and for the things growing around me and for the people around me, and how strong that feeling is and what you can do with that. And I've realized that developing that feeling and the connection and compassion for yourself and for people and for nature is so much stronger and more sustainable than doing things for like guilt or anxiety or self-righteousness. And that was definitely a realization that if I can help other people to kind of build that love of themselves and others and the planet that we live on, the action that comes from that can be so much stronger, and it comes from a place that lasts and like sustains the person as well. And so I think that sort of fed into how we then ran the environmental committee, because it was more about cultivating that sense of like connectedness to everything and love of the world, more than just being like, you shouldn't bring delivery back. So yeah, I think it's worked better that way.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. I am so inspired and humbled to be able to hear your story firsthand, and I'm sure that everyone else who's watching right now feels the same way, if not more. Lastly, what advice would you share with anyone who is watching right now who might be on the same path as you are?
So I think it starts with caring for yourself as you would your friends. I think we really struggle to do that, and just having compassion and understanding for yourself and your humanness and the failures and the strengths that we all have. And a part of that is just looking after yourself in terms of obviously like eating well, sleeping well, exercising, but also getting out of the house. If there's like one very simple piece of advice that I try and give people, it is, as amazing as Tampines House is, leave sometimes. Because they're just kind of getting out in the fresh air and into some green, even just the fields across the road where the dogs are, or the eco green down the road. It doesn't have to be far, but I think it can make a huge difference to like our personal well-being and how we feel about ourselves and how we feel about the world, and just getting our head out of this campus a little bit. And I think in doing that, you do start to realize the positive effects, I guess, that being in nature has on yourself, and therefore the effects that it has on the whole of humanity. And and you realize how much we need to kind of save it as well, for ourselves as much as for the ecosystems. So yeah, get out of the house and enjoy being in the natural world as much as you can. So I'm coming to the end of my time at UWC at Tampines House, and I never would have expected that it would allow me to develop and make me as happy as I am right now through my interactions with kind of everyone in this building and everyone that's been before. And I think, as with most people that come through Tampines House, you grow and you develop and you flourish, and then you're able to leave and make the world a better place for having had that experience. And that's something that I feel that I can do now, and I think everyone that comes through this place probably feels very similar. So I want to say thank you to every single person from 2017 onwards, everyone that's been a part of my journey, for just the incredible impact that you've had on me, and hopefully what I can now go on to do in the future.
Yay! Thank you so much.
Thank you.